Well, hey there everybody. Today I'm going to teach you how to make this beautiful white Easter lily out of crepe paper. You can absolutely use cardstock for this if you opt for a lightweight cardstock. However, I like to use crepe paper because it really makes the flower look a lot more realistic. So let's review the supplies you're going to need for this project. First, I am going to be using my Cricut maker machine, which does cut crepe paper. However, if you do not own the maker or you do not own a cutting machine at all, you can absolutely have a pair of scissors on hand for which you can cut the templates out in. So whether you own a cutting machine or not, you can definitely make these flowers. I have SVG files and printable PDFs for these templates included. I am using a white lightweight crepe paper here. I'm going to link my resource for you below so you know exactly which brand I'm using and what weight of crepe paper I'm using. You are going to also want to have on hand some quick dry glue. I like to use this quick dry tacky glue here. I typically use hot glue for a lot of my flower tutorials. However, with delicate crepe paper, hot glue can get a little bulky and bumpy to deal with, and this quick dry liquid glue works a lot better. I will link that below for you as well. You're also going to want to have a pair of detail scissors on hand because we are going to need to shape the tip of our petal a little bit. Even if you're using a cutting machine, you will need to have these on hand. You may want to have a pair of wire cutters on hand. And then as far as your wire that you will need for this tutorial, I am using a thick 18 gauge paper covered floral wire here. And I will link my resource for this below. This is going to be where we build the flower onto, all the petals onto. You're also going to need to have a very thin 24 or 26 gauge white wire in order to actually create each individual petal that we will be building for our Easter lily. And then for the center part of our Easter lily stamen here, you see that we have some additional green wires in there, and I'm just using a 24 gauge thin green floral wire for that as well. To actually build these colors here on top, build our little Easter lily stamen, I am using an air dry clay in yellow and white. You can pick these up at craft stores or online. You will also need some floral tape, or corsage tape it is also known as, in order to wrap everything onto the center part of your stem here. And then lastly, and this is optional but highly recommended if you want a very realistic looking Easter lily, I am using some pan pastels here and a little sponge, and we are going to be adding some color detail to our Easter lily. As you can see here, there is some green color going down the center, just like an Easter lily would be in nature. Pan pastels do get messy, so keep that in mind. You may want to have like a sheet of paper or some butcher paper or something you can lay down in order to dress your petals up with the pan pastel without getting it onto your surface around you. So let's go ahead and get started with this tutorial. Since I am using a cutting machine for this, I'm going to roll out my crepe paper and I'm going to cut some down to size. I am using a larger pair of scissors here for cutting this, but if you're cutting by hand, a pair of detail scissors actually works really well for cutting the templates out because this is a very delicate paper. So using large scissors like this is probably not going to be your best friend for getting precision, so use some detail scissors. So I'm just cutting this crepe paper down in half. And I am using a standard green mat for this one because it is a very thin crepe paper. However, if you are using a heavier weight crepe paper, which is an option, you are going to want to use the strong grip mat. And no matter which mat you're using or which weight of paper you're using, you always want to burnish, which is a fancy term for rub. I'm using a Cricut scraper to get that crepe paper to stick well, because crepe paper has ridges, and these ridges, they're not flat like a traditional piece of cardstock. So you want to kind of give it some extra encouragement to stick to your mat. Now it's really important here that the grain of your paper is running vertically. So make sure that it is running vertically up and down and you're not putting the grain of your paper going this direction on the mat. It's going to make a big difference when you go to cut those petals out. So I'm going to load this into my Cricut machine. I already have crepe paper selected in Cricut Design Space, and I am using my rotary blade, which is what cuts crepe paper with the Cricut Maker machine. If you have the Explorer, you will not be able to cut crepe paper with the Explorer, so go ahead and just opt for a pair of scissors. Okay, so as far as petals go, you will see in the template that there is a larger petal and a slightly smaller petal. You are going to need to have 3 petals of each. Now what that means is 3 fully made petals. So you'll notice that each of these petals come in a half because we are going to be overlapping them with some wire in order to accomplish the full petal look. So you will technically have 6 pieces of the large and 6 pieces of the small, and each of the 6 pieces will form 3 petals once completed. So I have that cut out, and before we can start building the actual petal part, we need to build our center. So let's set these aside, and then we're going to build the center first. In order to build our center, like I said, we are using air dry clay here, and I am using a thin 24 gauge green floral wire. And I just go ahead and cut this down. It's about 2.5 inches a piece. They don't need to be very long. I cut out 5 to 6 of these. I usually go with 5 because 5 is an odd number, and odd numbers always look better with flower centers and things like that. So for our green pieces here, we will be using the yellow air dry clay. And then for our centermost thick floral wire here, we will be using the white clay. So I'm going to start with the white. My clay is rather sticky. It's actually sticking to the inside of the lid. So I just sort of stick my hand in there and grab a little piece. You don't need very much at all. And I roll it into a little ball with my fingers, and then I press it on to the tip. So it should look something like that. That's our centermost piece. You can just set that down for a moment there. I'm gonna set it off to the side. And then these pieces here, we are going to grab small bits of this yellow air dry clay. They don't need to be very big. Be pretty tiny, just a little pinch worth there for your fingers. I'm gonna pick up one of these little green stem pieces here and one of my yellow pieces of air dry clay, and I rolled them into little balls, and now I'm just kind of roll them and press them right onto the tip, creating sort of an oblong bit of the yellow clay right at the top. Okay, so now that I have those done, you can let the clay dry, but I find that it's fine to just continue to work with it as is. It's not too difficult to work with even when it's still a little tacky. So I'm cutting some pieces of corsage tape here to have on hand. I'm just gonna cut 3 out. And before we start adding these on, I wanna add my corsage tape, or it's also known as floral tape, right around the tip here so that it looks green and not brown. If yours is already green, then maybe you don't need to do this part, but mine is brown and not green, so I'm gonna do that. Just like so. And then we're gonna start adding these on. I usually am able to add 2 or 3 at a time, and I'll just place them right on. I'll give them a little bend back right at the top there so they're kind of setting off from the center a bit. And depending on if your corsage tape, your floral tape is older or newer, it may or may not be as sticky as some. So if you have any trouble, you can always add a bit of glue. I use hot glue for this part, but as it is optional, you can add a bit of glue to get it started to make sure that it stays where you want it, so you can get that roll going. And you can manipulate these, so if you can't get them in the exact right spot when you're rolling that floral tape on, it's okay. You can still manipulate them even once they've been put on with the floral tape. All right, so at this point our center is complete and we can start building our petals so that we can complete our Easter lily. I'm just gonna set this aside for a moment. And we're gonna bring these over here. And the first thing we need to do is sort of pair them up. So I'm going to pair together each of the large ones and each of the small ones, just so they're in order and in position ready to be created. All right, so for this next part here, you can go ahead and trim down your thin white wire. Again, about 2.5 to 3 inches a piece will work just fine. It doesn't have to be super long, just long enough to get the petal on. I usually cut mine into thirds. So there we go, just like that. Okay, so at this point, I'm gonna grab some of that quick dry tacky glue, and I'm gonna come in here on one side, and I'm gonna very sparingly dot a little bit of glue all the way up the inside of that petal. I'm gonna pick up one of these and I'm gonna lay them right down, just like that, on top of the glue. Once you've done that, go ahead and grab the opposite piece to it and place it right on top, just like so. Give it a press. Now, if your tips overlap in a kind of unflattering way, that's where you grab those detail scissors and you just even it up a little bit like that, and you'll be good to go. And we're going to repeat this process with all of them. Okay, so at this point we have all of our petals assembled, and now we're gonna add that pan pastel. So now is a really good time to grab a piece of cardstock or some butcher paper, place your petals onto them because you do not wanna get the pan pastel anywhere except on the petals. And I always recommend washing your hands after you're done doing this. Even before you start like more assembly or anything, you may wanna just take a pause, wash your hands, make sure you didn't get too much of it on your fingers. Okay, so I am using a green pan pastel here and a little finger sponge. I'll link my resources for this below. And I just get the finger sponge and I dot it there, and then I come right down the center and I just give it a good back and forth a couple times. I like to try and make the part closer to the stem bottom a little bit darker because that's typically how they look in nature. They look a little darker here and a little lighter up there. And I'm going to do this for all of the petals exactly the same way. All right, now's the exciting part. Now is when we're going to actually add our petals to the center. You're going to start with the smaller ones, and you want to just start at the base and gently fold back to create sort of a little bit of an arch to the petal, and do this with all of them exactly the same way, the smaller and the larger. You'll feel that wire right down the center, and that's what's giving you your guide for shaping these back. Now's a good time to go ahead and cut some corsage tape. You can just cut about 4-inch pieces. That should be plenty. I usually have 3 or 4 ready to go. As you get better at this, you'll find that you'll need less and less of the floral tape. So starting with the smaller ones, you'll just go ahead and place it right up against the center, just like that. Pay attention that the bottom of your petal is starting slightly below where your center starts, just to make it look as natural as possible. And you can add 1 piece of floral tape per petal if you want. When you get better at it, you can add 2 and 3 petals at a time. I'm gonna add all 3 of mine at a time. And just like with our center, don't worry about the placement being completely perfect. It's okay if it doesn't look completely perfect as you're adding your floral tape on. We can manipulate the petals because of that wire even afterwards. I am using a little bit of hot glue there again, just to get my floral tape to stick right off the bat. So if you're struggling with that, opt for some hot glue on hand. And I'm going to roll that down. Just keep going until we reach the bottom. And you don't need to do too much with your petals at this point because they're gonna kind of move as we add the other ones. So just sort of let them be for a moment. And then grab the larger ones, and you're gonna wanna aim for those to be in between the smaller ones, just like that. And again, you'll get better at your placement as you practice these. So if it's easier for you, especially with the second layer, to add 1 piece of floral tape and 1 petal at a time, then you can absolutely opt for that to help keep your placement exactly where you want. I'm gonna add these other 2 in. Okay, once you get that in, then you'll want to just play with shaping the petals out a little bit, getting them to where they're all placed evenly around the center. If you need to adjust your center again at all, you can. And there's how you make your Easter lily. Now, if you want, you can add some greenery to it as well, which I'll show you that next. All right, so I've cut some greenery out here. This is included in the templates. And what I do is very simple. I just basically find a good spot on my lily, and I kind of like to keep them loose and long. So I like to bring it kind of close to the top here and let it kind of hang and do its own kind of freeform thing there. So all I'll do is I'll add a little bit of glue. And again, you can use the tack glue for this. You could also use hot glue for this part because it's just going straight onto the stem, so it's not as big of a deal as like with the petals, where we're trying to be very precise and delicate with how everything looks. So you can use the tack glue or you can use hot glue. I'm gonna use the tack glue since I have it right there. And I just fold it around the stem. And then you can add some kind of up and down the stem if you want. And then to finish everything off, it's a good idea to do one full wrap of your floral tape all the way down. So you'll want to cut a slightly longer piece. I'm going to cut about an 8-inch piece there. I'm going to work my way all the way down to where I know I'll cut my stem, because these are rather long pieces in my case, so I probably am not going to need my stem to be this long. I can go ahead and trim this down a bit. And if you want to add any life to these pieces of these leaves here on the side, you can take like a Cricut scraper or even a pair of scissors very gently and sort of curl, and it will add some curl to them to make them look a little bit more lifelike. Easter lilies are really beautiful. They're simple to make. They're fun. I would love to see what yours looks like. So please join me in my Facebook group so you can show off your talent too. Make sure you check out my YouTube channel for all of my other flower videos. I hope you guys like this. I will see y'all next time. Bye for now.